Welcome to Books and Things. It's been a pleasure for the last 6 weeks, and today is the 7th of a series of programs that I've been hosting to help with the heroin addiction and education so that everybody understands what's going on. And it's something that's taken a lot of lives, and mostly young people, although I saw one in the paper the other day, it was 63, I think. So it's not... The heroin is not just one class of people, it's everybody. And so we're going to try to give you some ideas of what you look for and try to help people stay alive. Today's guest is Ron Kersey, EMS and Emergency Management Coordinator and head of the Paramedic program at LMM. Welcome, Ron.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
It's a pleasure to have you here because we've been talking about the different groups that are out there that are working for the education of the people so that we can help stop some of this. I'm hoping it's working, and that's why I did this the show. So now we're at the point where the person has come into the hospital either by ambulance or however.
Right. You make a good point. There is a lot of great people out there trying to do a lot of good work. There's multiple civic organizations, multiple government organizations, community leaders. I mean, people have really banded together to try their best, at least locally, to try to fix this. But it is such a complicated issue with so many moving parts that I think every time we think we scratch the surface of a possible solution, we hit another road bump or roadblock along the way. You made a good point. This addiction, this epidemic and addiction that we're facing here with opiates and heroin, it knows no socioeconomic boundaries. It knows no geographic boundaries. I remember when we first started to pick up on what we thought was a spike in activity back then, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. We had let some information out, and it appeared in the press, and a local town leader was a little upset to think that this had happened in his community, and he didn't necessarily think it was attributed to opiates or heroin. But quickly people realized that that's not the case, that it didn't matter. It wasn't a New London problem, it wasn't a Waterford problem, it wasn't a Groton problem. It was across the whole area, and if not, it was probably bigger than that. But we needed to put our arms around a certain geographic area, so we really concentrate on southeastern Connecticut, a big number of us. And those of us working on this cross paths multiple times. We try to attend as many organizational meetings as we can. We've done panel discussions to try to do our best to educate the community. And I've had some wonderful people sit next to me that weren't doctors, paramedics, nurses, social workers. They were actually people recovering from addiction, people that have family members. Those are the best people to get some information out of. They've had to walk the walk. Yeah. They've lived through some of this, and they've had to self-navigate through a very difficult system. So, they sometimes are, the stories that people tell, very heartbreaking. Very heartbreaking. So it's affected the entire community. It's only getting worse right now. It's difficult to help people. It's difficult to stop.
And it's hard. I had Jack Malone on, and I said, Jack, how do you know if you have somebody that's doing drugs? You start missing things in the house.
Yeah, well, that's true. Is people get very creative when you face addiction. You get creative on how to take care of that addiction, and it's out of necessity. It's not out of want to hurt anybody or want to actually steal from anybody. You see that as your outlet. So yeah, you see medications disappearing. You see money disappearing and things disappearing. We tell people that it doesn't matter who comes into your house. You have to know everything everywhere they go. You keep things in your medicine cabinet. Well, you don't think people that use your bathroom don't look in your medicine cabinet. They do. And so, just having that one prescription around your house is a temptation to people. And
it's worth more money than the heroin on the street.
And that's why heroin is on the rise so much, is because heroin is much cheaper. It not necessarily did these individuals get their start with heroin. They may have gotten their start with an opiate drug, medication, whether it was prescribed or not. They liked that. It gave them a high that they wanted more of. And so in seeking it out, you can't get those drugs very easily, and they're very expensive if you can, and heroin is much cheaper. And so they go down the heroin route. And heroin's very unpredictable these days. You don't know what you're getting, how it was mixed, where it came from. It's just cheaper, and it fills the need. Back a little over a year ago, the hospital I work for and our paramedic program found ourselves at the center of what we thought was a spike, in heroin overdoses or opiate overdoses. We did 7 in one day, which prompted a very, very nice doctor in the emergency department to want to do something that day. So she said, I've got to stop this. There's never in her career she'd seen 7 overdoses come into her department in one day. Wow. And so she picked up the phone, she called the day paper right away, and immediately it got publicity that night. It hit the paper, hit the internet.
I think I remember that.
And so, from there, it kind of, and we thought it was a spike. Well, what we thought was a spike well over a year ago is just what we consider now the new norm. We didn't see the activity come down. Yeah, you can tell when certain deliveries come into town, it does raise a little bit. But overdoses are a daily thing now. As much as chest pains are and strokes are and car accidents are, well, overdoses are.
I hesitate to ask, but how many of those overdoses walk out?
You know what? A lot of them end up surviving.
Really?
A lot of them end up surviving because they're lucky.
Yeah.
They're lucky. And they're gambling on that now. You know Narcan?
Yeah.
Everybody's, and I'm a true believer in Narcan saves lives. I really am. But you have got to use Narcan or think of Narcan with a lot of caution. It will temporarily take away the effects of the opiate or heroin that you took, temporarily.
Yeah.
That drug that you took, or whatever it was that you took to put you in this place you were, may last longer than the Narcan.
Yeah.
So if it's given to you at home, EMS, Emergency Medical Services, isn't called, you could be back to the same place. You could be not breathing within a period of time.
Wow.
And then that person's not standing next to you with the Narcan. Right now, if we get to you and you're not breathing, we'll give you Narcan and we'll wake you up. And it totally reverses the effects. It's an antagonist, which means it fights against the effects that drug or opiate's trying to do, and it takes that away. Well, you're clear thinking at that point, maybe clearer than you've ever thought before. And what you say is, I don't want to go to the hospital, I don't want to be at the hospital, and at that point, you can't be held against your will. You can't kidnap somebody and force them to go. You can't keep them. So a lot of times people sign out and they leave, or they try to sign and leave from us. That's why we tend to prefer to wake them up when we have better control of them. They're in the ambulance or whatever. The goal for us as paramedics is to just give them enough of that Narcan that they start breathing. But maybe they sleep through the trip. Get them to the hospital. They're at the hospital, they wake up, there's a small window of opportunity there where we can say, look, you were just about dead, as close to dead as you can get. Can we help you? Can we get you help? Can we help you try to navigate through a system to get help? And maybe in that small window of time, they'll accept some help. But for a great number of people, they end up walking out. But you're really gambling, because what it does is it suppresses your drive to breathe. And when you don't breathe for very long, you'll die. And so if you're in a restroom at a transportation center, you're in a restroom at a restaurant, you're someplace where somebody's not going to find you for 4 to 6 minutes, you'll be dead.
Wow. Now this Narcan, I had read, L&M is providing to all the police departments.
One of our senior leaders, Bill Stanley, is a great guy. He was working with a local police chief in the area, and the police chief said, look, I've got this problem. I've got this a little bit of Narcan that I was given some time ago in a grant, and it's expiring. And, I'm working on looking for other grants, and I'm looking for trying to put together a proposal for funding. And Bill Stanley said that there's no time for that. There's not the time for that at all. And so what we agreed to do was to help the local police departments that didn't have Narcan. We said, we'll fund the Narcan for you, for your department right now. Look at future funding, because this stuff does go, and we'll help you with your education if you need us to. A lot of these places have their own people in-house that can do the education, but we offer to do that. And the departments that didn't have Narcan at the time, many of them took us up on that. We just wanted to get it in the hands of the police officer who's going to be the first to arrive, medically trained or not. And they all have some sort of medical training, but whether they're at the level of an EMT or paramedic or not, Narcan will get that person controlling their own airway and breathing again. Get it in the hands of the person that's there first. And we didn't want them to have to take the time to go through grant proposals or anything else. They can do that. There's time to do that now. Get the Narcan in their hands.
That's amazing. I know one of my guests, he had one in his pocket and she had one in her purse. Narcan.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, these are prepared people.
Yeah, what I like to tell people, so sometimes when you do these panel groups, there's time afterwards where you kind of sit there and you're able to answer some questions and people come up and talk to you. And this one lady wanted me to demonstrate how Narcan worked, nasal Narcan, how you give it to them in their nose and stuff. And so I did that. And she, seemed to be a little bit disturbed and stuff. And I said, what's going on? You seem a little upset. And she told me she had a loved one at home that she felt was at risk. And I said, you know what? It's not unreasonable for you to have Narcan at home because you have someone you love at risk. And then I did caution her. I said, it's not the answer, though. The answer is to try to get them help. But it's also not the answer if they're not breathing to not call us. Yeah. You need to give the Narcan and call us. Let us talk to them. Let them refuse to us. Don't let them talk you into not calling, because then bad things can happen.
Well, I think that's one of the, probably a disadvantage of having everybody have this stuff is if they're not trained, bad things can happen.
Well, yeah, the after effects, bad things can happen. I think that there's not anybody that's not going to argue that it will immediately save the life, right? Yeah. And so that's where we start. You can't argue with that. And then
should we have them in schools?
Well, there is some people out there pushing for that. Do we see activity in schools? High schools at times. I wouldn't say that that's our biggest response area. School nurses have a lot of other things at their disposal to help take care of the kids. I think each school has to evaluate what their situation is. I think for the most part, schools are pretty safe places, and the leadership of that school just assesses if they think it's a need or not.
I'm glad I grew up when I did.
Yeah, well, it's a very complicated time now. I have my kids are 22 and 26, and I think that they've made a tremendous amount of great decisions in your life, but I can't imagine what challenges they faced, and social media and cell phones and all of that. It's a very different place than when you and I grew up.
Oh, it is. It's a terrible place, actually. Yeah. I would think sometimes, boy, if I had a computer when I was a kid, I could be a brain surgeon. Yeah. But I'm glad I didn't, because that's what I would have been. It's nobody. Yeah. And I have a grandson who's 22, and I worry about him, naturally. Yeah. Because I don't know what he's doing there. Yeah. He lives alone, and I hear from him every once in a while. But the thing is they're all subject to it. Yeah. You're out with a party, or, who knows what's going on out there.
I was with a group of school administrators and people that were going to try to do something at a school, like a panel group at a school for kids. And so how do you deliver this message? They don't hear the message as we deliver it. They're almost best at delivering the message themselves to each other. They do a lot of good work. Students themselves do a lot of good work against abuse amongst each other, bullying and sexual abuse and different things. They actually have, things they can text on their phone for that. We need to make this like that, where they're involved in helping educate their peers and get them more involved in it.
Now, what about the people who have survived and are now clean? Are they very helpful for?
Yeah, so some of the best and most accessible resources for somebody looking for recovery are recovering addicted people.
Yeah.
Heroin Anonymous, like Alcoholics Anonymous, they run meetings everywhere, and they are a great resource. The issue with recovery and getting people into programs, number one, there's not enough programs. Number two, it's hard to find programs. It's hard to find inpatient, outpatient programs. It's hard to navigate. The person has to do it themselves. So you just were woken up with Narcan, where you're in the hospital, we're saying we want to help you. But the problem is you've got to voluntarily get yourself into these systems. So in that short period of time, you've got to have some success, right? If you hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, what are you going to do? You're going to stop. And so what we really need is a system that's easy for them to navigate, that there's always access to programs. And then they get themselves into a 45-day program, right? That's what everybody talks about. Well, I've had some very smart people, some doctors, some nurses, some social workers, all sorts of people that will promise you that 45 days is nowhere near enough. You need a lot more. It takes a lot longer to reprogram your brain than 45 days. And it's almost a guarantee, if you go away for 45 days and you come back to the same environment that you left, you're going to be back in the same problem.
Yeah.
And so they face the impossible at trying to get into systems, and there are plenty of people working on systems. Shine a Light on Heroin, that group is phenomenal. At trying to get involved and navigate the difficult systems. Insurance companies play a part in this, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're insured, you're not insured, what your insurance will pay for, all sorts of things. And they talk about Suboxone clinics and methadone clinics. Not one solution's good for everybody, right? It takes a host of different solutions to help somebody towards recovery.
Well, yeah, because when they're on recovery, then they're getting other medications from somebody else.
Yeah.
If they don't take those, Methadone
and Suboxone are two of the largest.
So you're taking them off one drug and putting them on another drug to.
But it's controlled, and you know what, and that doesn't work for everybody. I hear you. And listening to the experts on it, which I am not, but listening to the experts, I pay attention. That's good for some, but not good for all.
Yeah.
But it's prescribed. It's meant as a part of a treatment plan. It's not the only part of the treatment plan, right? They're getting counseling and you're trying to get them help while they're on this stuff so that they don't spend forever on it.
I have a friend of mine, her daughter died on prescription drugs, OD'd on prescription drugs, and 3 years later her son died of an OD. Yeah, so there's both sides in the same family. One's prescription and the other one's just plain drugs.
Yeah.
And just burying two kids and just.
Yeah, no, it's extremely sad, but that is not far from other stories that you hear.
No,
not
it's
far
all over
from
the
other
place.
stories that you hear. We have given Narcan to the same people multiple times.
Oh.
Now, in my time, if I was to be in the back of an ambulance and somebody told me I wasn't breathing, I certainly would try to, fix what put me there.
Not gonna do that again.
Yeah, and there's people that have gotten it more than twice by pre-hospital providers by response, and it's, it is because this is a tougher task than any of us can imagine to try to recover from this.
Now, what kind of a window do you have to use the Narcan?
It's that 4 to 6 minutes. If you what the opiate or heroin will do is it will suppress your drive to breathe. You will stop breathing. Your heart will still beat and you'll circulate around blood, but it won't have oxygen in it. And they say about 4 to 6 minutes. And if you get a little bit more out of that, you're extremely lucky. But things start to die. Maybe you recover, but mentally you don't recover, and you've got brain damage. That could also be a problem. But for the most part, the people that don't survive this, and we get to them and they're way beyond our help. We find it, and the evidence that the overdose happened, whether it's needles, the medication, whatever's around them, and they're just way beyond us. And so we end up, trying, but it just doesn't happen. So about 4 to 6 minutes after you stop breathing.
It's got to be a tough job being an EMT. Tough on the...
It is. I've done it for a long time, and I have some of the best coworkers in Southeast Connecticut. We are very lucky in Southeastern Connecticut. We have fire department responders, ambulance responders. These are very talented people.
Yeah.
I can assure you that before Narcan was a big deal, we were saving the overdose patients as much as we're saving them now if we got to them while they were breathing, while they still had a heartbeat.
Yeah.
We know how to breathe for you. That's not a challenge for us. We can help you breathe, even without Narcan. But having the Narcan out there gets you breathing faster on your own. And right here in your own town of Groton, you have fire department, police department responders that will get there within seconds. Every fire department in the area is into medical response now. These are EMTs that may live right next door. Your firehouse is just down the street. And then ambulances are staffed around the clock and can get quick. And the hospital paramedics will come from either Pequot or L&M.
It's come a long way from when I was a kid. The local fire department would come over and pick you up, throw you in the ambulance, and down the road you go. And no treatments for anything because they weren't trained.
Yeah. Do you know some of the first EMTs in the state were from this area?
Really?
From the Groton, Ledyard, and Waterford area. They took an EMT class that was taught at the hospital, but it was one of the first state-approved programs in the 70s. Wow. And these are some people I look up to. Many of your viewers might know George Fargo just recently.
Remember George, yeah.
He just recently retired from the hospital. He was teaching there for us for a while.
Yeah.
He is one of the first in the area, and such a man. Such a man. He's responsible for teaching me in my earlier years. So, yeah, it has come a long way.
When I was a kid, I was rode in an ambulance, or I'd get hit by a car. And I don't remember them doing anything but throwing me in the ambulance, taking me to the hospital.
Taking you to the hospital, yeah. It's come a long way since then.
As a matter of fact, it was a Cadillac.
Yep.
Yeah, the old Cadillacs.
Cadillacs back in
Nothing
the late
like
70s.
today. Today's a real Cadillac with everything you got in there.
Everything, yeah. It's a little mobile intensive care unit on wheels. Yeah.
And you look at those things and say, oh my God, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
But you got to have it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you're running into.
The idea is to bring as much of that emergency department to your site as possible.
Yeah, as quick as possible.
We don't pretend to be doctors. We want to get you to one, but we want to get you there in better shape than when we pick you up.
Yeah. Now you have EMT, and then what's the next one?
Paramedics.
Paramedic. That's the one with the L&M.
Yep. So paramedics will bring the emergency department care to augment what the EMTs do. And EMTs do a great job at moving people, assessing you, taking your vital signs. They do a great job of childbirth. If you're wrinkled up in a car, a good EMT is going to take care of you, stay by your side, get you out of that car. Paramedics are going to bring the IVs, the medications, the advanced airway equipment, the cardiac monitoring equipment, things like that. So the emergency department care right there.
It's phenomenal, really. Because like I said, I was in the fire department when I was a kid. That has so changed. Yeah. Because now everybody's trained to do everything.
Everything.
And it's just amazing, the training that goes in there. Yeah. And I have several friends that one's a chief, but the training is just unbelievable. And same with EMTs. Yeah. Thank God.
Well, you take a look at your average firefighter. Has to be an expert in so many things, right?
Yes, he does.
Hazardous materials, disease management, medical stuff, fires.
You watch some of these shows on TV, Chicago PD, Fire Department, and Med, and they really learn things from them.
They do not get the credit that they deserve. They are really experts in so many things that would scare most people.
Well, that was a quick 25 minutes. We got about 5 minutes left. Is something else you'd like to tell us?
Well, I just appreciate all my colleagues that are really working hard in southeastern Connecticut. And like I said, from local government officials to civic organizations like Shine a Light on Heroin, and people just on their own that have taken on counselor roles to help with the problem. But every time you think you get towards a solution. It takes money to fix some things. And
Yeah.
so, even our politicians are trying to get money infused into the system to do that.
Yeah.
From our point of view, if you have somebody at risk, you think an overdose is imminent, access 911, get us there. Sometimes we have a way of talking to people that will get them to go with us to get help. If you use Narcan, you have Narcan at home, give us a call. Get us there. Even if that person wakes up, everything looks good, everything won't be good for very long.
Yeah.
You got to get us involved. And even if they survive that one event, the very next overdose will probably take their life. They're just gambling, and it's a short.
Well, I've heard of people come out of the hospital, they're great and everything else, they go home and take one shot and boom, they're done.
Well, that has to do with their resistance is down, right? So you go through recovery, your body has a chance to clean out a little. You somehow fall off the wagon, and you have to have some. Well, that dose that took care of you before you went into recovery is way too much for you now.
Well, I for one want to thank you, EMTs.
No, thank you for
the
having me.
stuff that you
I
do.
appreciate it
And
very much.
I'm glad you came on the show. And I hope people are listening and taking notes, because this is it's a very serious thing.
Yeah, well, thank you for what you did to bring the information to your viewers. I think the more of this, the better.
You're welcome. I'm really happy I did it.
I appreciate it.
This is our 7th show. Next week, we're going to do a recap and bring all the 7 shows together and let you know where to go, who to call. If you have a heroin problem in your area, you know of some people that are affected. We even had a brain surgeon in here last week, and we discussed what the brain was like. He's not really a brain surgeon, but he was good. And we decided, we figured out what the brain does when you get heroin stuck in there. And I'd rather drink, because I think I'm drinking, I can walk home. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this series, and let me know how you liked it. Write to the studio, write to me, write to any of these people. Ron's information was up there a little while ago. He'll put it back up. Pork Tuck VFW is serving fish and chips every Friday night during Lent. And for more information, there's Ron's information. For more information, either contact me or call the VFW at 860-599-2404. For previously aired shows, tune into scc-tv.org, click on the YouTube button, and search the site for Books and Things with Tom, and you find all of our shows on there. Today's show will be on there probably Monday. And I want to thank Ron for being here. It's very enlightening. And like I said, we appreciate you people. You guys do a great job.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a book signing at the New London Library on Saturday, March 11th. And starting at 10 o'clock, stop by my table and say hello. I'll be selling my books, and there's be 49 other authors there. Place got a lot of, come to my booth. And next week I'll be offering, as I said, the recap of all the shows, how to contact each of the groups, and who to contact. Also, check my Facebook page, Books and Things with Tom, for updates. And thank you for watching. Email me at santostom@comcast.net. You should be reading. It's still cold out. We've got snow tomorrow coming.
That's unbelievable.
So on a good snowy day, cuddle up with a good book and read one of my books. See you next time. Thank you. Once again, thank you.
Thank you.